I came home early that Tuesday and heard my husband on the phone in his study. She doesn't suspect anything yet. Iris is due in 4 months. It's a boy. We sell the house, push the divorce through fast, and Elena's out of the picture for good. He laughed, a short, satisfied sound. Then he added, Mom's right. She's too weak to fight it. I stood frozen in the hallway, key still in my hand, wedding ring suddenly burning like acid on my finger. That was the moment I stopped being his wife and started becoming the woman who would ruin him. I stepped through the front door of our sleek, glass-walled house in Pacific Heights, the kind of modern place that looks perfect in photos but always feels a few degrees too cold. My black leather tote felt heavier than usual in my hand. I took a slow, steady breath, then called out, Victor, I'm home. Today, I got fired. He was sprawled on the gray leather sectional, eyes glued to his laptop screen. When he finally looked up, his face didn't register concern. No furrowed brow, no, are you okay? Just the faintest curl of a smirk, like I'd told him I'd spilled coffee on my keyboard. Really? He said, voice flat. What did you do? Or were you just not good enough? The words landed like a casual slap. He was already looking back at his screen before I could answer. I stood there in the foyer, heels still on, chest tightening so hard I could barely breathe. I'd lied about the firing on purpose, to test him, to see if the man I married 6 years ago was still somewhere inside that polished, distant shell. I'd hoped for worry, a hug, even a simple, we'll figure it out, anything that showed I still mattered. And instead he gave me two more perfunctory questions, then muttered, You'll handle it? I'm slammed right now. And turned his attention back to whatever spreadsheet or email was more important than his wife falling apart. That night I lay on our king-size bed staring at the smooth white ceiling, the city lights bleeding in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The small lie I'd told had cracked something open inside me, and now I couldn't unsee it. Victor didn't love me. He loved control. He loved being the one who never had to feel anything he didn't choose to feel. And for the first time, I let myself wonder what else he was hiding behind that calm, handsome mask. The days after my little test felt heavier, like the air in our house had thickened with something I couldn't name. I started replaying everything in my head, not dramatically, not in some tearful montage, just quietly, methodically, the way you might go back through receipts when you realize the credit card statement doesn't add up. There were so many small things I'd let slide before. His phone always face down on the kitchen island, even when we were eating dinner together. Late-night calls he took in the study with the door closed, his voice dropping to a murmur I couldn't quite catch. The nights he came home after midnight, smelling faintly of bourbon and something floral that definitely wasn't my perfume, offering only a vague, long day at the office before heading straight to the shower. He'd stopped looking me in the eye when he said goodnight. The hugs, once warm, lingering, had turned into quick, obligatory squeezes, like checking a box on a to-do list. I kept circling back to my birthday dinner last month. We went to that overpriced place in the marina with the harbor view. Victor ordered the same Cabernet he always does, handed me a slim velvet box across the table, and watched while I opened it. A diamond tennis bracelet, beautiful, expensive, impersonal. I smiled, thanked him, leaned in to kiss his cheek, but the entire time his eyes kept flicking to his phone, lighting up with notifications he didn't bother to silence. Work, he said when he caught me looking. I nodded like I believed him. I didn't. That night I started keeping notes. Not a dramatic diary, just a locked note on my phone titled Expenses. Hotel charges from a boutique place in Napa on weekends he claimed he was at a conference in LA. Dry cleaning receipts with lipstick on the collar of his favorite blue shirt, and a single strand of long auburn hair on the passenger seat of his car when I moved it to the garage one afternoon. None of it was proof. Not yet. But it wasn't paranoia anymore either. It was pattern recognition. The more I paid attention, the clearer it became. The distance between us wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. A wall going up brick by brick while I was still trying to pretend we were building a life together. And for the first time, I wasn't angry at myself for noticing. I was angry at him for thinking I wouldn't. I woke up around 2 a.m. to the faint sound of a door clicking shut somewhere down the hall. The house was dead quiet otherwise, Just the low hum of the air conditioning and the distant pulse of traffic on the Bay Bridge. My heart gave a small, uneasy thud before I even knew why. I slipped out of bed, no bare feet silent on the cold hardwood, and padded toward the hallway. A thin stripe of warm light leaked from under the door of Victor's study. His voice drifted through the crack, low, controlled, the way he sounded when he was closing a deal. "She doesn't suspect anything yet," he said. "Everything's still on track. Don't worry, Mom." My pulse slammed against my ribs so hard I thought he might hear it. She. Was that me? I pressed my shoulder against the wall and edged closer until my ear was almost touching the doorframe. "Iris is due in 4 months. It's a boy." A pause, then the same calm, calculating tone. "We need to move the divorce forward. The sooner she's out, the cleaner this gets." The words landed like ice water down my spine. Iris. A boy. Divorce on a timeline. I stood frozen in the dark hallway, one hand flat against the wall to keep myself upright. The man on the other side of that door, the one I'd shared a bed with for 6 years, the one who still kissed me good morning out of habit, wasn't just cheating. He was orchestrating, plotting, erasing me. My world didn't shatter in a dramatic crash. It folded in on itself, quiet and final, like a house of cards someone had finally stopped pretending to balance. But I didn't cry. I didn't burst in and scream. I didn't even let my breathing change. Instead, I backed away, step by careful step, until I was in the hallway shadows again. I returned to our bedroom, slid under the covers, and stared at the ceiling while my mind raced in perfect cold clarity. Victor thought I was still asleep in the dark, still trusting, still blind. He was wrong. From that moment on, and I wasn't the wife waiting to be told the truth. I was the one collecting it. Piece by piece, evidence, timelines, lies he didn't know I'd already heard. He wanted to play chess. Fine, I just stopped being a pawn. The next morning, Margaret showed up unannounced, the way she always did when she wanted to remind everyone who really ran things. She swept through the front door in her cream cashmere coat and pearl earrings, air-kissing both cheeks like we were still playing happy family. Her smile was perfect, polished, practiced, empty. "Elena, darling, you look tired," she said, patting my hand as if concern were something she could turn on and off. "Rough week?" I forced a small laugh. "Something like that. I was just heading to the market. Need anything?" She waved me off. "Oh no, I'll just have coffee with Victor. Run along." I grabbed my keys and purse, walked out the front door, then doubled back through the side gate and crouched behind the rhododendron bushes that lined the patio. The French doors to the living room were cracked open just enough. I could hear every word. Margaret's voice came first, low and clipped. "You need to push her to sign the papers quickly, Victor. No more dragging this out. Sell the house. Transfer the funds to Iris. That child deserves a real family. Elena is nothing but an obstacle." Victor gave a short, amused laugh, the same one he used when someone underestimated him in a boardroom. "Relax, Mom. She's weak. She won't fight it. She never does." I pressed my palm against the rough brick to steady myself. My whole body was shaking, not from cold, but from the sheer, clinical brutality of it. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't even betrayal in the usual sense. This was a coordinated plan, a family project. Margaret wasn't the concerned mother-in-law offering advice. She was the architect, pulling strings the way she always had, generation after generation. They were discussing the liquidation of my life the same way they'd discuss redecorating the summer house in Tahoe. I stayed hidden until their voices moved deeper into the house. Then I slipped back to the driveway, started the car, and drove around the block twice just to breathe. When I finally pulled back in, I walked through the front door with grocery bags in hand and the same tired smile I'd worn for years. But inside, something had shifted permanently. This wasn't a marriage anymore. This was survival. That evening, Victor set the table himself. Linen napkins, the good wine glasses, on candlelight, theater. He even poured me a glass of the Pinot Noir I used to love before I realized how much he hated when I drank more than half a glass. We sat across from each other like we were still pretending. "Sweetheart," he started, voice gentle in that rehearsed way of his. "I've been thinking a lot. I think we should get a divorce. He let the word hang there, watching my face for the expected collapse. It's not your fault, he continued smoothly. We've just grown apart. We're not the same people we were when we got married. I want to do this the right way. You can keep the house if that's what you want. And I'll make sure you're taken care of financially. Let's keep it amicable. No mess. I looked down at my plate, let my shoulders slump just enough, let my lip tremble the tiniest bit. Are you sure, Victor? I don't want to lose you. I love you. The words tasted like ash, but I sold them. I had to. Inside, rage boiled so hot I could feel it behind my eyes. He was trying to lull me to sleep, convinced I was still the trusting, fragile wife who would sign whatever he put in front of me. He thought the promise of the house and a generous settlement would be enough to keep me quiet while he moved Iris and their unborn son into the life he'd already designed without me. Every sentence out of his mouth was a performance. Every sympathetic tilt of his head, every soft, "I hate that it's come to this," was calculated. And I matched him, beat for beat, small nods, watery eyes, the occasional shaky breath. The perfect grieving wife. He had no idea I already knew about Iris. No idea I'd heard the timeline. No idea I was recording every word in my head. I building the case brick by brick while he thought he was winning. The tension in the room was electric, but only one of us felt it as dread. The other felt anticipation. He thought he was ending the game. I was just waiting for my turn to move. I wasn't going to do this alone anymore. The next afternoon, I drove across the bridge to Sophia's loft in the Mission District. She'd been my roommate freshman year at Berkeley, the one who dragged me to protests and late-night study sessions, the one who never once judged me when I chose Victor over everything else. I hadn't told her the full truth in years. That ended today. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she'd sensed me coming. One look at my face, and she pulled me inside without a word, straight into a hug so tight I almost couldn't breathe. "Soph," I managed, on voice cracking for the first time in weeks. "Victor's cheating. He's planning to divorce me, sell the house, move on with some woman named Iris who's pregnant. His mother's in on it. They think I'm too weak to fight." Sophia didn't flinch. She just held on tighter, then pulled back and looked me dead in the eye. "Okay, you're not alone in this. You never were. Come sit." We ended up on her couch with 2 mugs of tea she didn't let me refuse. After I laid it all out, the overheard calls, the hotel receipts, Margaret's cold instructions behind the bushes, Sophia didn't offer platitudes. She went straight to strategy. "You need Diana Cross," she said. "She's the best divorce attorney in the city for exactly this kind of bullshit. High conflict, high asset, high ego husbands who think they can steamroll their wives. She's taken down bigger sharks than Victor. I'll text her now. She owes me a favor from last year." 2 days later, I walked into Diana's office in the financial district. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, no family photos on the desk. Everything about the place said competent, unflinching, expensive. Diana was in her mid-40s, sharp navy suit, hair pulled back, eyes that missed nothing. I told her everything. The fake firing test, the hallway conversation, Margaret's patio plotting, the amicable dinner where Victor tried to sell me the soft exit. Diana listened without interrupting, taking notes in neat, precise handwriting. When I finished, she leaned back. "You've got more than most women in your position ever get. Recorded conversations. Mental note, we'll get those legally preserved. Financial discrepancies. I proof he lied about your employment status, which undermines his credibility if he tries to paint you as unstable or dependent. And the pregnancy timeline gives us leverage on dissipation of assets if he's already funneling money to this other woman." She tapped her pen once. "You're not the victim here, Elena. You're the client with the upper hand. We're going to take back what's yours. Quietly, cleanly, and without mercy. You ready?" For the first time in months, I felt my shoulders drop, not from defeat, but from relief. I wasn't crying in a corner anymore. I was building something. A plan, a team, a way out that didn't end with me broken. Women helping women. It wasn't sentimental. It was power. The settlement meeting was held in a sterile conference room on the 42nd floor of a downtown tower. Glass walls, long mahogany table, a bottled water no one touched. Victor sat at one end in his favorite charcoal suit, looking every inch the reasonable, generous husband. Margaret was beside him, lips pressed into a thin line, hands folded like she was attending a board meeting instead of dismantling her son's marriage. His lawyer opened with the script they'd rehearsed. My client is prepared to offer a very fair division. Mrs. Moore retains the Pacific Heights residence plus a substantial monthly support payment. We're confident she'll find this equitable. Victor leaned forward slightly, offering me that same practiced half smile he'd used at our wedding. We can wrap this up today, Elena. No need to drag it out. I met his eyes. Then I smiled back. Not the weak, trembling one he expected. A slow, cold one that didn't reach my eyes. No, I said quietly. We're not wrapping anything up on those terms. His lawyer blinked. Victor's smile faltered for half a second. I slid a slim folder across the table. I have counsel, Diana Cross, and I have evidence. Recordings of your phone calls discussing Iris and the baby, the timeline for forcing me out, the plan to sell the house and redirect funds. I also have bank statements showing transfers to accounts tied to Iris Lang. And just so we're clear, I was never fired. I've maintained my own separate income the entire time. You don't get to paint me as the dependent wife who needs rescuing. Victor's face drained of color. His mouth opened, closed. What? How did you? Margaret's hand shot out and gripped his forearm, but she stayed silent. For once, she had nothing to say. I stood up slowly, voice steady. You both underestimated me. Badly. So you thought I'd sign whatever you put in front of me because I loved you once. Because I was quiet. Because I didn't make scenes. I looked straight at Victor. That was your mistake. Diana placed a hand lightly on my arm. A signal. We had them. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. Now, I said, let's negotiate for real. Victor stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Maybe he was. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one begging to be seen. I was the one they couldn't look away from. And it felt like the sweetest kind of justice. The courtroom wasn't dramatic like you see on TV. No raised voices, no last-minute confessions, no judge banging a gavel like a thunderclap. It was quiet, efficient, almost clinical. The judge reviewed the filings, asked a few pointed questions, and signed off on the terms we'd hammered out in mediation the week before. It ended fast because we had the leverage and we used it cleanly. I didn't go in asking for the moon. I didn't need to. I took half of the marital assets. Fair under California law, nothing extravagant. I kept the Pacific Heights house because it was community property and because Victor had already agreed in writing to let it go rather than drag things out in front of a jury. And I secured a one-time lump sum payment to cover what he'd tried to siphon toward Iris and the baby before the divorce was final. Nothing punitive, just what was mine by right. Victor sat across the aisle in a dark suit that suddenly looked too big on him. His usual calm confidence had cracked. His jaw worked like he was chewing on words he couldn't spit out. Margaret was beside him. A ramrod straight, but her hands were clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. She didn't speak once. For the first time in her life, maybe she had no script, no control. They paid a price. Not in headlines or public humiliation, but in the slow, irreversible loss of the future they'd planned. Victor lost the narrative he'd built his entire adult life around. The perfect son, the untouchable winner. Margaret lost the dynasty she thought she could engineer, their perfect family illusion shattered without a single raised voice. There was no screaming match in the hallway afterward, no dramatic confrontation. I didn't need that. Revenge that loud is for people who still care what the other person thinks. I didn't anymore. As we walked out of the courthouse into the bright San Francisco afternoon, Diana fell into step beside me. She adjusted the strap of her briefcase and gave me a small, satisfied nod. You didn't just win the case, Elena, she said quietly. You won it with brains. Most people come in swinging or crying. You came in prepared. That's why they folded before we even got to trial. I looked out at the city, the bay sparkling in the distance, the hills rising sharp against the sky, and felt something settle inside me for the first time in months. Not joy, exactly, not triumph in the fireworks sense, just clarity. Victor had lost because he'd spent years convincing himself I was fragile, breakable, dependent. He never saw the woman who was quietly documenting every lie, every transfer, every whispered phone call. He never imagined I'd turn silence into strategy. I didn't destroy him. I just refused to let him destroy me. And that, in the end, was enough. I moved into a high-rise condo downtown 6 weeks after the papers were signed. Floor-to-ceiling windows facing the bay. The Golden Gate in the distance on clear days. The water glittering like shattered glass at sunset. No echoes of Victor's footsteps in the hallway. No Margaret's judgmental perfume lingering in the air. Just me, my books, a few pieces of art I'd always loved but never dared hang because he called them too modern. And the quiet I'd forgotten silence could be peaceful instead of lonely. I didn't need a man to tell me I was worth something anymore. I didn't need his approval, his attention, or his version of love to feel solid. For the first time in years, my worth wasn't measured by how well I fit into someone else's life. It was measured by the fact that I was still standing, sharper, I'm steadier, and completely on my own terms. Sophia comes over most weekends. We drink too much rosé on the balcony, talk about everything and nothing, laugh until our stomachs hurt. She never says, "I told you so," even though she could have 1,000 times. She just shows up. That's enough. Diana and I have become real friends, not just lawyer and client. We meet for coffee in No Valley or grab dinner when she's not buried in depositions. She's the one who taught me that justice doesn't have to be loud to be final. Sometimes we don't even talk about the divorce anymore. We talk about travel plans, new cases, bad dates she's endured since her own split years ago. She laughs when I tell her I've started rock climbing on weekends, something Victor always said was too reckless for me. Turns out I'm pretty good at it. Victor tried reaching out a few times in the beginning. Texts that started apologetic and ended demanding. Voicemails that sounded smaller every time. I read the first couple, then stopped opening them, blocked the number. No dramatic farewell message, no final confrontation. Just silence, the loudest thing I could give him. I threw myself into work, took on the projects I'd always wanted but never had time for because I was too busy managing his moods. I traveled. Solo trips to Lisbon, Kyoto, a long weekend in Big Sur where I hiked until my legs gave out and slept under stars without checking my phone. I started running again, not to look a certain way, but because it felt good to move my body like it belonged to me. Being underestimated had always been my secret weapon. Victor never saw it coming because he never really saw me. Margaret didn't either. They both thought quiet meant weak, reserved meant spineless. They were wrong. Now no one dares look at me like I'm breakable. Not colleagues, not strangers, not even the occasional guy who tries his luck at a bar. I carry myself differently. Shoulders back, eyes steady. The kind of calm that comes from knowing exactly what you're capable of surviving. I didn't rise from the ashes in some fiery, cinematic revenge arc. I just refused to stay burned. I rebuilt. Quietly, deliberately, unapologetically. And that, I think, is the strongest thing a woman can do. Walk away from the wreckage, not looking back, and build something better. Something no one can take away. Because the truth is, we don't need to destroy the people who tried to destroy us. We just need to outgrow them. And I have.